All right, ready to dive in. We're tackling generative AI today.
Perfect timing, too, with all the buzz around it.
You've really outdone yourself with these sources this time.
What you wanted the deep dive, right? We've got the big overview of generative AI itself, then some really cutting-edge stuff from Anthropic and OpenAI.
And even Google's jumping into the mix, from what I saw.
Oh, yeah. They're definitely not sitting this one out.
So where do we even begin? It's like AI went from beating us at chess to writing poetry overnight.
Right. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
I think for this deep dive, our mission is, first, to really understand how AI learns at its core.
Okay, back to basics. I like it.
Then we've got to figure out what makes generative AI so different from, well, everything that came before.
Because it's not just doing things faster or better, it's doing things we didn't even think possible.
Exactly. And that leads us to the big question. If AI is making decisions, creating things, how do we understand what's going on inside that black box?
Explainability, that's the key word everyone's throwing around.
And we've got some clues in these sources, not just on the what, but the how of making AI's thinking transparent.
Which is crucial, right? Especially when you think about how AI is already impacting the art world. Games are becoming more immersive because of it.
And we're even seeing the first hints of AI in healthcare. That's a whole other can of worms.
Wow, yeah, the ethical implications are huge.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit. We keep seeing AI, ML, DL. What's the difference?
It's easy to get lost in the jargon.
It really is like alphabet soup.
So the umbrella term is artificial intelligence, AI, basically any technique that lets computers mimic human intelligence.
So that old chess program I have, that counts as AI.
In a way, yes. But then we get to machine learning, or ML, and that's where things get interesting.
This is where the computer's not just following a set of rules, right?
Right. Instead of us programming everything, ML lets computers learn patterns from data.
Okay, so it's figuring things out on its own, like by analyzing tons of examples.
Exactly. And deep learning, DL, is a subset of ML, but we're using these really complex neural networks, like giving the computer a superpowered brain.
Got it. But in a lot of these articles, AI and ML seem kind of interchangeable.
You're right, and it's because most of the cool AI stuff we're seeing now, especially in generative AI, is powered by ML techniques.
They go hand in hand, basically.
Exactly.
Now, speaking of generative AI, that PDF we have uses this fun example of training AI to judge the cuteness of cats.
Oh, yeah, that one.
It's silly, but it really breaks down how AI learns.
Thousands of cat pictures, all in the name of science. What's not to love?
So we start by feeding the AI a huge data set, tons of cat photos, each labeled with a cuteness score.
So the AI's got its study material ready.
Right, and then it goes through these stages: training, validation, prediction.
Like a student prepping for a big exam.
In training, the AI looks at each photo, tries to guess the cuteness level, and compares its answer to the real score.
And each time, it's adjusting its internal model, figuring out, okay, what actually makes a cat cute?
And to make sure it's not just memorizing the photos it's already seen, it gets tested on a totally new set of cat pics. That's the validation phase.
Right. Got to make sure it can generalize, judge any cat's cuteness, not just the ones it's crammed for.
Exactly. And if it passes that test, reaches a certain level of accuracy, then it's ready to rate new cat photos it's never seen before.
Ready for the real world, the cat cuteness judging competition.
And here's what's interesting. That model might need retraining later on, if people's preferences change or new cat breeds become popular.
Got to keep up with the trends, even in AI.
Okay, so that's the learning part. But what makes generative AI different? This is where things get really wild.
It's not just analyzing data anymore, it's creating something entirely new.
That's where the generative part comes in, right?
Exactly. Music, art, stories, even virtual worlds.
Like, we're giving AI the tools to be imaginative.
It's mind-blowing.
Our PDF breaks down the 3 main tasks of generative AI, and this is where we see its potential.
Okay, lay it on me.
First, there's style transfer. It's like magic, taking a photo and turning it into, say, a Van Gogh painting.
Whoa, I've seen those. That's wild.
Then there's domain transformation, and this is where things get trippy. The AI shifts the type of data itself.
Like apples to oranges.
Even more drastic. The PDF talks about Microsoft Flight Simulator using AI to build a 3D world from 2D satellite images.
That's insane, like turning a blueprint into a whole building.
And the third one is data enrichment, where the AI actually creates new data to make existing models better.
So it's not just using what we give it, it's coming up with its own stuff to learn from.
Exactly. Like imagine it creating images of rare cancer cells to help doctors with diagnoses.
Okay, now that's where you see the real-world impact starting to happen.
Right. And two companies that are really pushing the boundaries here are Anthropic and OpenAI.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is they're both super focused on safety and ethics.
It's not just can we build it, but should we? And how do we do it responsibly?
Yeah. Which is refreshing, because with a technology this powerful, things could get out of hand quickly.
I was reading about Anthropic's constitutional AI, and that seems like a pretty radical approach.
Oh yeah, it's like they're creating a set of rules, like a constitution, to guide AI development, keep it aligned with human values.
So instead of just letting AI figure everything out on its own, we're setting some ground rules from the get-go.
Exactly, because who knows what values AI might come up with on its own.
And OpenAI, they're also big on safety with all their safety and alignment research.
Their whole goal is to build safe and beneficial AGI, artificial general intelligence, an AI as capable as humans.
That's the big dream, right? But how do we ensure it stays beneficial and doesn't, take over the world?
Hollywood's given us plenty of scenarios to be worried about.
And that brings us back to explainability. We can't just trust these black box AI systems, especially if they're making important decisions.
Imagine an AI denying you a loan and you have no idea why.
We need to understand how it's reaching those conclusions.
Transparency is key, and that's where explainable AI, or XAI, comes in.
Google's white paper on AI explainability talks about these things called attributions. Can you bring that down for us?
So attributions basically tell you how much each input feature contributed to the AI's decision.
So if an AI says, yes, loan approved, we can see how much weight it gave to your income, credit score, etc.
Precisely. It's like breaking down the AI's thought process.
Makes sense, but how do we actually calculate those attributions?
There are different methods, but a common one is using Shapley values.
Shapley values. Sounds complicated.
It's a concept from game theory, but think of it like this. You're trying to figure out how much each employee contributes to a company's profit.
Okay, I can see that.
So instead of employees, we have input features. And instead of profit, it's the AI's prediction.
Got it. The Shapley values tell us which features were the MVPs in the AI's decision-making.
Exactly. And to make sense of these attributions, we need baselines. Like in our employee example, the baseline would be the company's profit with no employees at all.
So it's a reference point to understand how much each feature matters.
Right. But the choice of baseline is important because it can change how we interpret those attributions.
It's not as simple as just plugging in numbers. There's a lot of nuance involved.
Definitely.
And Google has this what-if tool, which sounds pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing interface for actually visualizing and probing those ML models.
So we can see how different inputs affect the AI's predictions, even test out different what-if scenarios.
Exactly. It's like peeking inside the AI's mind, seeing how it ticks.
And this is super helpful for understanding how the AI works, debugging it, and even spotting potential biases.
Explainability is a huge step forward, but are there any limitations?
Well, interpreting those attributions can be tricky, right? You might need expertise in the specific field to really understand what they mean.
It's like needing a doctor to explain your blood test results.
And there's always the risk of someone manipulating those attributions, trying to trick the AI or make it seem like it's making decisions for different reasons than it actually is.
So, explainability is powerful, but it's not a foolproof solution. We still need human judgment and critical thinking.
Okay, so far we've covered the basics, what AI is, how it learns, and why understanding its decisions is crucial, especially with generative AI changing the game.
We've only just scratched the surface.
But before we dive deeper, I'm really intrigued by this research from Anthropic, using sparse autoencoders to figure out AI's inner workings.
It's like we're trying to map the AI's brain.
They're using these sparse autoencoders, or SAEs, to pull out interpretable features from Claude 3 Sonnet, one of their big language models.
And get this, they're finding features that represent super abstract concepts, emotions, social interactions, even things related to safety, like bias.
Hold on, so they can see what the AI is thinking about those things.
It's like eavesdropping on the AI's internal monologue.
That's getting a little spooky. What kind of things are they finding?
They found features tied to specific topics, like the Golden Gate Bridge or brain sciences.
So it's like the AI forms its own internal representation of those concepts.
And get this, they also found features that track functions in code, like adding numbers together.
So it's not just understanding words, it's understanding how things work at a deeper level.
Exactly. But what's even more mind-blowing are the features representing emotions and social cues.
Wait, seriously?
They found features that light up when the AI encounters expressions of sadness, loneliness, the desire to be alone.
It's like the AI is developing its own sense of empathy.
It's incredible, right? And here's the kicker. They can actually manipulate these features to influence the AI's behavior.
Wait, hold on. They can control the AI's thoughts.
In a way, yes. They call it steering. They can make the AI more likely to talk about a specific topic or express a certain emotion.
That's both fascinating and a little terrifying.
I know, right? Imagine the possibilities for guiding AI away from harmful behavior, though.
Okay, that's a bit reassuring. But how are they extracting and interpreting these features? It sounds incredibly complex.
It is. They train the SAE on a massive amount of data from Claude 3 Sonnet, basically the outputs of the AI's processing units.
So they're feeding the SAE the AI's brain activity to analyze.
Exactly. And because the SAE is designed to be sparse, it only activates a small number of features for any given input, which makes them easier to understand.
So it's like the SAE is filtering out the noise and highlighting the key concepts driving the AI's behavior.
Precisely. And they're using a bunch of techniques, like having humans evaluate the features and using automated scoring systems to make sure they're interpreting them correctly.
So it's not just guesswork. They're rigorously testing their interpretations.
Exactly. And they're also using scaling laws to guide the training process.
Scaling laws, what are those?
Think of it like this. As you increase an AI model's size and the amount of data it learns from, its performance usually gets better.
So bigger is better.
Generally, yes. But it's about finding that sweet spot between model size, data, and the computing power you have.
It's a balancing act, basically.
Exactly. And these scaling laws help them train the SAE as efficiently as possible.
It's amazing how much effort goes into understanding these AI models. It's like a whole new science is developing.
It really is.
And this science has the potential to revolutionize how we interact with AI, how we control it, and how we ensure it's used for good.
It's an exciting time to be in this field, that's for sure.
It's both exciting and a little scary, honestly. We talked about the incredible potential, but what about the downsides? Like, what about bias in AI?
You're right, that's a huge concern.
These AI models are trained on massive data sets, and if those data sets reflect real-world biases, those biases can seep into the AI's decision-making.
Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Exactly. And generative AI makes this even trickier because it's creating new content, so those biases might not be as obvious.
And they can be very persuasive, too, because the content looks and feels so real.
Like, imagine AI generating fake news articles that subtly reinforce harmful stereotypes.
That's a very real possibility. And it's not just text. Generative AI can create biased images, videos, even audio.
So how do we prevent this? How do we make sure these powerful tools aren't used to spread misinformation or perpetuate harmful biases?
Well, first, we need to acknowledge that bias exists in all data sets. We can't just blindly trust the data we're using to train these models.
We need to be critical of the data,
Yeah,
actively look for biases, and try to address them.
exactly. And there are techniques like data augmentation, where we intentionally add more diverse and representative data to the training set.
So it's about making sure the AI is exposed to a wide range of perspectives and experiences, not just a narrow slice of reality.
Precisely. And we need better methods for evaluating AI systems for bias, using diverse data sets that reflect the full spectrum of human experiences.
We need a more holistic approach that recognizes that bias can manifest in different ways and have different impacts.
And finally, we need to include diverse stakeholders in the development and deployment of these AI systems.
That means bringing in AI experts, ethicists, social scientists, and representatives from communities that will be impacted by these technologies.
It's about making sure that AI benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
That's a powerful message. But even beyond bias, are there other risks we need to consider with generative AI?
Definitely. Misuse is a big one. Generative AI can create incredibly realistic fake content, which could be used for spreading misinformation, creating deep fakes, or generating sophisticated phishing scams.
It's like giving bad actors a whole new arsenal of tools.
Exactly. And remember, generative AI is still in its early stages. As it gets more sophisticated and accessible, the potential for misuse will only grow.
That's a sobering thought.
It is, but it's important to be aware of the risks so we can develop strategies to mitigate them.
So what can we do? How do we balance the incredible potential of generative AI with the need to prevent harmful consequences?
It's a complex challenge, but we need to start thinking about stricter regulations for generative AI use, invest in research on AI safety and security, and educate the public about the potential risks.
It's about finding that balance between encouraging innovation and ensuring that these powerful tools are used responsibly.
Exactly. And it's a balance we'll need to constantly reevaluate as AI continues to evolve.
We've covered a lot of ground today. The foundations of AI, the revolutionary power of generative AI, and the importance of understanding how these systems work.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Before we move on, though, I want to zoom in on how generative AI is shaking up the art world and the booming NFT market.
AI art is such a fascinating phenomenon. Our generative AI PDF talks about how it's becoming a hot commodity in the NFT space.
Right. NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, are basically unique digital assets that are verifiable on a blockchain.
And because AI can create these unique, often stunning pieces of digital art, it's a perfect fit for the NFT world.
It's blurring the lines between human and machine creativity, which raises some really interesting questions about what we consider art.
That's a whole other philosophical debate, but it's undeniable that AI is having a major impact on the art world.
Absolutely. And it's just one example of how generative AI is transforming creative industries. We're seeing it in music, fashion, architecture. The possibilities seem endless.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following this technology.
It is. But as we explore these possibilities, I think it's important to do so with a sense of wonder and a healthy dose of caution.
I agree.
We need to harness the power of AI for good while being mindful of its potential pitfalls.
Well said.
On that note, let's wrap up part 1 of our deep dive. In part 2, we'll delve into other applications of generative AI and discuss the ethical and societal impacts of this game-changing technology.
Sounds good. I'm ready for round 2. Welcome back. Glad you could rejoin us for more on generative AI.
I'm ready to dive back in. It's kind of crazy to think that just a few years ago, this stuff was pure sci-fi.
Right, like AI composing music or designing a whole video game world. Come on, that's Hollywood stuff.
And now it's becoming reality. It's like we're living in the future we always imagined.
It really is a remarkable time to be following this tech.
Absolutely. And building on what we talked about in part 1, it's not just the technology itself, it's how it's impacting, well, everything.
Yeah. The ripple effects are huge, touching creativity, how we work, even how we understand what's possible.
Totally. So I'm excited to get into more specific examples of how generative AI is being used across different industries. We touched on the art world with NFTs, but there's a whole universe out there.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface. Let's start with the gaming industry. Generative AI is already making waves there.
Our generative AI PDF mentioned companies using AI to create, well, everything. Characters, levels, even entire game worlds.
Imagine that the game's basically designing itself.
It's like handing the reins over to the AI. Let it run wild with its imagination.
The possibilities are mind-boggling. Think of games that are constantly evolving, new content being created on the fly based on how players interact.
It would be like stepping into a living, breathing world where every playthrough is unique.
Exactly. And AI can go beyond just making the content. It can make the gameplay itself better.
Like smarter, more realistic characters, or even tailoring the experience to each player.
Right, like the game learns your style and adapts.
That PDF mentioned Microsoft Flight Simulator. That's a pretty impressive example of AI-powered world building.
Oh yeah, they basically used AI to create a 3D replica of the entire Earth.
Incredible detail, too, from what I saw.
It's a huge technical feat, and it shows just a glimpse of what's coming.
As AI gets more powerful, those game worlds are only going to get more immersive and engaging.
Definitely. But generative AI is not just about entertainment. It's making its way into more practical fields like customer service and knowledge management.
Right, the PDF talked about those large language models, or LLMs.
They can do so much automate tasks, make customer interactions smoother, even give people access to really specific info.
The example that really struck me was the Mayo Clinic potentially using LLMs to give patients medical knowledge and expertise.
Imagine having a virtual medical assistant at your fingertips, answering your questions, even connecting you with the right specialist.
It would be revolutionary for healthcare access, especially for people in remote areas or who can't easily see a doctor.
Absolutely. And the LLMs aren't just for healthcare. They're being used in all sorts of industries.
Finance, education, retail, manufacturing, you name it.
The PDF mentioned analyzing customer feedback, automating those repetitive tasks everyone hates.
And even generating creative content for marketing, Got to keep up with those trends.
Exactly. LLMs are becoming essential tools for businesses big and small.
They offer efficiency, better customer experiences, and a whole new avenue for innovation.
It's a lot to take in for sure.
It really is. And the crazy thing is, there are new generative AI breakthroughs happening all the time.
It's moving so fast, which is both exciting and a little intimidating.
Right. Like, we got to remember the potential downsides, too.
Absolutely. Bias, misuse, even job displacement as AI gets smarter.
Those are some serious ethical and societal questions we need to be asking.
We can't just ignore those. We need to have those conversations now as a society to make sure AI development is responsible.
Couldn't agree more. But even with those challenges, I think we should still be optimistic about the potential.
Oh, absolutely. Generative AI could help us tackle some of humanity's biggest problems.
Climate change, healthcare, poverty, you name it.
Yeah.
We're already seeing it make a difference.
New drugs, more sustainable cities, personalized education for students. It's happening.
It's pretty inspiring when you think about it that way.
It is. It's not just about machines replacing humans. It's about redefining how we work together.
That's a good way to put it, a collaboration, not a competition.
I think we're moving towards a future where AI enhances our capabilities, not replaces us entirely.
And those new jobs will need creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, the things AI isn't so good at yet.
Exactly. We need to embrace the potential, use AI to help us become better, not fear it as some kind of threat.
We have choice, right? We get to decide how we develop and use this tech.
100%. And we can choose to use AI to create a world that's more equitable, sustainable, and fulfilling for everyone.
I like that it's about shaping the future we want, not letting the tech dictate it to us.
That's the key.
This has been a great conversation so far, really thought-provoking.
Glad to hear it. Ready for round 3? We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how Google's approaching generative AI for businesses.
I'm all ears. All right, welcome back for the final part of our generative AI deep dive.
Time to wrap things up, but we've got a lot to cover still.
We've gone from AI 101 to the mind-blowing world of generative AI, seen how it's changing things already.
And now we're going to shift gears a bit, talk about the nuts and bolts, how you actually build and deploy this stuff.
We've talked a lot about the what and the why, so now it's time for the how.
And luckily, these sources have some great insights on that front.
That Google white paper on scaling generative AI for businesses, that's a good place to start.
Oh yeah, they break down 2 main approaches, decentralized and platform.
Kind of like choosing between building your own house from scratch or buying a prefab one.
Exactly. Both have their pros and cons.
So with the decentralized approach, you're basically building your own generative AI system, piece by piece.
You're handpicking every component, the model, the database, all the different parts.
Sounds like it gives you a lot of control, but requires a lot of technical expertise.
You need a team of skilled engineers who can handle all the integrations and customizations.
Makes sense. But for companies that maybe don't have those resources, there's the platform approach.
Right, think of it like a pre-built ecosystem for generative AI.
Like everything's already set up and ready to go.
Pretty much. Platforms like Google's Vertex AI offer a suite of tools and services that are all designed to work together.
So it's more plug and play. Easier for businesses to get started without needing a huge team of specialists.
Faster time to market, easier to scale, and often lower costs compared to going the decentralized route.
But you probably sacrifice some flexibility and customization, right?
That's the trade-off, yeah.
Yeah.
Platforms might not be a perfect fit for every specific use case.
But for many businesses, the convenience outweighs those limitations.
Exactly. And Google's white paper stresses the importance of a structured framework for deploying these solutions, no matter which approach you choose.
They call it the Discover, Develop, Deploy, Operate, and Govern framework.
It's a roadmap, basically, guiding businesses through every step of implementing generative AI.
From finding those initial use cases to making sure the AI is running smoothly and ethically.
It all starts with discovering those potential use cases, figuring out which models might work best.
Then you move to the develop phase, where you train the model, fine-tune it, make sure it's doing what you want it to do.
Lots of tweaking involved, using techniques like prompt engineering to get the results you're looking for.
And once you've got a model that's working, it's time to deploy.
Get it out into the real world, integrate it into your systems, make sure it can handle real data and traffic.
And then the ongoing stuff, operate and govern.
Operation is keeping an eye on things, making sure the AI is performing well, fixing any bugs.
And governance is all about the ethical stuff, data privacy, managing risks.
It's an ongoing process, not a one-time thing. This framework is super helpful for businesses navigating this complex landscape.
So we've got the how down, but let's zoom out again. What are the key takeaways for our listeners about generative AI? What should they be thinking about after this deep dive?
Well, I think the main thing is that generative AI is not just a cool tech demo, it's a fundamental shift.
It's changing how we think about information, creativity, problem solving, everything.
It's pushing boundaries, opening up new possibilities in every field you can imagine.
From art and science to business and healthcare, the potential is huge.
It's both exciting and challenging, full of potential benefits and potential risks.
And that's why this conversation is so important.
Absolutely. We need to be responsible, think about the ethical implications, and understand the impact this technology will have on society.
It's been an incredible journey, this deep dive into generative AI.
Tons of information, but hopefully our listeners feel inspired and ready to engage with this tech.
It's an ongoing conversation we're all learning together.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep pushing for responsible innovation.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and until next time, keep diving into the world of knowledge and discovery.